Well, welcome to your first harmony method video, and today you're going to learn so many great things that will really make you think about music fundamentally differently. So this video is applicable to people of all levels, from beginner through to intermediate and even advanced musicians who haven't really thought about how chords work in their music. So let's get started with some real basics here. I'm going to show you a C major scale because this is the first starting point. So this is middle C. Why do we play scales? Why do we practice scales? You know, some people play scales their whole life and they don't even know why they're playing them. Well, today I'm going to tell you about a magical number in Western music and in piano music, and that's the number 7. That's right, 7. There are 7 chords in Western music. Not big chord glossaries and books that are this thick, just 7. I could basically listen to any song, any piece of music, and figure it out by ear using numbers between 1 and 7 because there are 7 chords that the scale produces. So let's have a look at what these 7 chords are. So we're going to start with chord 1, which is a C major chord in this case. So let's have a look at this chord here. Now you'll notice that I'm missing the notes in between in this chord triad. I'm missing that note, and that creates a nice, comfortable harmonic sound, which we're so accustomed to hearing in music. You can hear that sounds very familiar. So let's now play the 7 chords. Chord 1, chord 2. You notice I'm just replicating the pattern, chord 3, chord 4, and walking up in steps. Chord 5, chord 6, chord 7, and chord 1 again. We return to chord 1 again because we're on another C. C can be found, by the way, below the 2 black keys. They're all Cs. And the distance between one C to the next C is an octave. That's something out there for the beginners to know. So they're the 7 chords of the C major scale, and they form all the music that we know. Sure, lots of other songs are in other keys and scales, but the great thing about the piano tuning system is that you can replicate that in all of the other scales and produce the same result, meaning you can play the same song in different keys, which basically means there are just 7 chords in the music. I know that might sound a bit complicated to start with, but that's really the principle that you really need to think about. There are 7 chords in music. And all you have to do as a listener and as someone who loves to listen to music is think, well, what chords out of those 7 chords are taking place in the songs that I like to listen to? So let's try and decode that and figure out how this works then. So I'm going to talk about 3 very significant chords out of the 7 chords. I'm going to talk about chord 1, and then I'm going to talk about chord 4 and chord 5. Chords 1, 4, and 5. Out of the 7 chords, they're probably the most important. And when I say important, I mean that they are the most pivotal chords that are holding the musical structure together. And by the way, this applies to all genres. This could be classical music, this could be jazz and blues, this could be rock or pop or anything contemporary, soundtrack. Whatever style of music you're into, these are sort of like the universal laws of Western harmony, and they're sort of inescapable. So out of the 7 chords, these 3 chords, you can hear them, they sound very familiar, very pivotal, and very happy and bright. They're what we call major chords, chord 1, 4, and 5. Let me give you an example. Mozart, chord 1, chord 5, chord 1, chord 5, chord 1, chord 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. I think we figured out Mozart's secret there. So there are other examples in other genres too, like a 12-bar blues, chord 1, chord 4, chord 1, chord 5, chord 4, And there are thousands and thousands of songs that do that. So let's just talk a little bit about technique before we go into more details about the chords. Now for the beginners out there, you're going to struggle to play 3 notes at the same time straight away, potentially. And if you have that problem, just use your first 3 fingers to play the chord. That's fingers 1, we call the thumb 1, 1, 2, and 3. But the important thing you have to remember, if you do use your first 3 fingers, make sure your wrist is relaxed. It is so important when you play the piano that your wrist is relaxed. It's the most important thing. So you need to have your wrist relaxed and your first 3 fingers on the notes, in this case C, E, and G, with a relaxed wrist, and the rest of your fingers actually sitting on the piano. Don't take them off the piano, that's very, very bad technique. If you have played piano for longer and you have more flexible fingers, it is better for you to use fingers 1, 3, and 5. Those of you who can't use fingers 1, 3, and 5 yet, because it's a bit more symmetrical and your fingers might not be strong enough, particularly these 2 weak fingers, to be spreading across the chord, you can start with 1, 2, and 3 fingers, because that will just give you a context to start with, and as your fingers get stronger, you can then move to this more sophisticated fingering. So it's like that. So back to our chords 1, 4, and 5, which in this case is C major, F major, and G major. What about the other chords then? So chords 2, 3, and 6 sound fundamentally different to chords 1, 4, and 5. You can hear that. That's because they are minor chords, and minor chords sound sort of sadder. They sound more nostalgic. And the role they have in the music is they sound more expansive. They expand on those happy major chords, and the magic of music really is the combination of major and minor chords. Major, chord 1, minor, chord 3, minor, chord 6, major, chord 4. I mean, how many songs do that? Tons of songs do that. So many. Because it sounds great, doesn't it? Major, minor, minor, major. The mixture of both. So, all of a sudden, you now have the knowledge to compose your own music. Just use numbers between 1 and 6 and mix them around and see what happens. Get a notepad out, get to your piano or keyboard and start trying it now. You'll be amazed at how good you sound straight away. Never mind playing Mary Had a Little Lamb in your first piano lesson. That's just plain boring when you can all of a sudden compose your own music. But just one thing that you need to know about, and that's the funny chord, the wild card of the scale, chord 7. Sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? It's what we call a diminished chord. And diminished chords, well actually, back in the olden days they used to call it the devil's chord. You hear this chord sometimes in film music, you hear it quite a lot in jazz and classical music when there's something dramatic or chaotic happening. You hear it in Italian opera when someone's about to die. You hear it in those old Charlie Chaplin films. But they really make life a bit complicated when we're starting to compose our own music. So you can probably keep away from the chord 7 for the time being and compose some lovely examples just using chords 1 to 6. So let me randomly put some chords together. And you can be completely random because the tuning system on the piano is doing the work for us. We can, using what we understand about the scale, create our own music very effectively. So I'm going to randomly, without any strategy, just come up with my own chords. I'm going to start on chord 1, chord 4, I might go to chord 2, then to chord 5, and just do it in groups of 4 and loop it around. It's also very good to play the chord 4 times. Because it gives the music a rhythmical sound, a melodic sound, a sound of music, not just jump in straight to the next chord. It gives the music a sense of time and rhythm. So let's think of another example then. Why don't I start on chord 6, because that's a nice sad minor chord. Remember, 1, 4, 5 major, 2, 3, 6 minor. So what about chord 6? Chord 3? Chord 4, time. So I look forward to seeing you on the next tutorial, and we will expand on these concepts. But in the meantime, have fun. Thank you.